origin story is good. All right, so continue, my friend.
So like, I don't know, maybe a couple weeks ago, I just realized that everybody around me was kind of tired of hearing about how I'm like more of a centrist, right? Obviously, like you and me get along very well. I would say maybe more right. I don't know, but
Yeah,
definitely, I'm like all the ideas that I see in the news, I'm able to just think about it instead of just like jump to a conclusion. Um, like there are so many things out there that I feel like we should all be on board, and I think we are a lot closer than usual. And like I said, everyone in my home has just gotten so sick, tired of me just being like,
yeah,
this is so
rambling and
ridiculous,
ranting.
ranting and rambling, and then sometimes you'll get on Facebook and you'll see something, and I'll start typing, and then no, don't do it, because it's just gonna be too long form. And a lot of people nowadays, unfortunately, my father included, are very staunch, either left or right, and it doesn't matter what you say. So I felt like this is so important because I do have a voice. I don't know how big it's going to get, but I just felt like
Sure.
interviewing people from different perspectives and different means, and it doesn't just have to be about politics. I just felt like just something, just an outlet for me. And what's so funny is I've gotten a lot of response back from people who are like, dude, I'd be down to be on your show. Like people I didn't even know, felt a certain type of way.
Yeah.
But anyway, this is Six Sense Podcast. I'm your host, Darren, and we're just going to kind of go from there. We're not sure where this is going, but we'll just start. Today I've got my first episode going live here after we're done recording. I've got a guest today. Obviously, you can see him, the one, the only Scott Somerville. We've known each other for a long time. We worked at Microsoft together, and I have seen some of his Facebook posts and rants, and they always crack me up, and we've always kind of stayed in contact. And when I need help formulating a thought in response to a certain person, I think you know who that probably is, but I always contact Scott. So Scott, do you want to introduce yourself a little bit?
Yeah, I'm Scott. I'm a vagabond, professional vagabond, caregiver, entrepreneur, multi-business owner, kind of gone all over the place. I've Darren and I worked retail together. I've been in the trenches there, like economically speaking. I've been, super poor. I've worked for the Department of Homeland Security as a chief of staff in a cybersecurity firm. So I've been poor. I've been whatever you want to call it. Now I'm electing to be a pirate living on a sailboat, as I've seen what the world is becoming, and I'd like to live my own path and not jump into it. And with what Darren said about being a centrist and whatnot, I agree that we're both centrists. It's not that, and I may lean a little right sometimes, but I think that things have just gotten so crazy that being a centrist is now like a radical position. And yeah, that's what I got to say about the intro there. It's getting crazy out there, and we all agree on more than we disagree. And I like the message here. We are all in this ship together. We're all piloting it and working together, and fighting each other ain't going to do anything. You got people that are trying to control you and just, they don't care about you, and they pretend to. I digress, but man, it's so
I
frustrating.
couldn't agree more. I
Yeah.
mean, like, people have such strong opinions. I was just talking to a friend yesterday about Fetterman. And it's like, dude, he was the craziest liberal. And then he says stuff and people are like, he's right wing. It's like, no, he's a 2000 liberal.
Sure.
Like when
or even earlier than that.
Yeah. It's like he just wants to fight corruption.
The purity test nonsense really gets to me too. I tend to lean kind of libertarian, and it's like, if you have any deviation from like staunch market economics or contractionarianism or whatever, like, oh, you're not a true libertarian or whatnot. It's like, who cares? Okay, cool. I'm not a true libertarian. Who gives a shit,
Right.
Are we using potty language or no on this one?
You know what? You go ahead and use whatever you want, because I can just edit it out if
sure, you can bleep it out.
No-go, so I don't care.
All right. But yeah, it's bullshit. It's so infuriating, the purity test nonsense. Like, just do what you think is right. You don't have to like adhere to a political philosophy and try to like win points with your friends on whether how liberal or conservative or whatever you are. It's anyway.
You
I
couldn't have said
digress.
that
I
better, and
can rant.
I think that that's that resonates with like a lot of people, and a lot of people that I spoke to that wanted to kind of hop on this, whatever this is. I think agree as well. So, you can have left wing politics and right wing politics and still be a libertarian. It's just you should just do what's right instead of like whatever whoever they are, they say. You know what I
Sure.
mean? Like, I just sometimes even I find like my dad's very right wing, and my uncle is very left wing. And I was talking to my mom the other day, and I mentioned that I had seen my uncle's like Facebook feed, one time maybe about 6 months ago, and it's like, how could he possibly have any other viewpoints when the only thing he sees is this like super far left algorithm that's like programmed for him to just display, and then on the other side my dad is the same way but on the right. So like, how in the world are they supposed to just like kind of come together?
Right.
Because
And
you've got
the
like the boomer generation that watches mainstream media. That's kind of like what they do. So they turn on um
Channel
you know
9 News. It's my dad
Channel
watches
9
all day.
News, or Rachel Maddow, or
Oh my
some of the
God.
Fox stuff, and it's like, dude,
Sure.
and this whole thing, I know this is kind of haywire, but with Putin and Tucker Carlson talking, that's wild. Why is that a problem? I just never understood that.
Exactly.
And the thing
Yeah.
is you've got people like Jimmy Kimmel who are, or maybe it was Jimmy Kimmel, maybe I missed, whatever, one of the late night talk shows, like talking about, well, that's the craziest traitorous thing that could happen. It's like, why?
Right.
Big, and if you watch the interview, it's pretty clear that, first off, I don't think Putin ages, but he's been around for like 9 presidents, so he
Yeah.
knows how we work. It's just, and then you hear, I can't remember who it was, on MSNBC saying like, that's not real journalism. Okay, well then what is?
Yeah. What is
You
journalism?
are
Is it
are
in
you
MSNBC? Yeah.
right? It's like all subjective. It's subjective to
Sure.
whatever idea you want it to be. Like and the thing is, journalism is supposed to be trust through verification.
Mm-hmm.
And so when they're asked about, we'll get into this in a minute, but like COVID, right? They're, I cannot remember where that video, I'll have to find that video, but it was maybe it was Patrick Bet David, but he was like, can you apologize? Like in the same scenario, knowing what we know right now, would you do the same thing? And these people can't even be like, no, you know what? We did mess up. I am so sorry. What we should have done is not put sick people into nursing homes and all this stuff. And it's so like, or like Rachel Maddow saying,
Oh yeah. If
get
you
the
get the vax,
vaccine.
you're going to stop the spread. What a moron. And then this idiot
Crazy.
goes on TV and is like, oh, misinformation is the basis of terrorism or some shit. It's like, you literally told people that you would save grandma by getting the vax, and there was no testing done on this claim. Nothing.
Nothing. And no one
Nothing.
asked. That's the craziest part, is no one asked any questions. I had a manager excuse me. So I work at UPS, and then one day a week I work at down the street. I work at a front desk for the discount.
I would bleep that out, by the way.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And for the discount, of course. But anyway, because it doesn't pay. But that's not the point. The point is that my manager is a very staunch Democrat, and we are getting into that area with COVID politics, where businesses were saying if you don't get the shot, then you have to wear the mask. Things were kind of ramping up. Like they're going to start mandating the vaccine. If you get the vaccine, you don't have to wear a mask. Like those kind of things. And I held out because whatever. And we were talking one day while I was sitting there, and I'm like, why are you so confident with this? And he's like, why are you not? And I'm like, well, I'm not going to blindly trust anything the government says to me. Right. There's no I had no information to go by.
Isn't that what like liberals used to say, by the way? Isn't that a Democrat perspective? I don't know what's going on anymore.
That's like a super Democrat perspective.
Yeah.
I mean, that's even a journalistic perspective. That's a
Sure.
journalistic perspective. That's not even just like a Democrat thing. That's a hey, listen, the government's telling us stuff. Okay, trust through verification. Like I said, they don't verify anything. They're just like, oh, that's what it is. Or when they're asked about, can you say that these laptop stories, was that a fake? And these journalists say, well, that's the information we were given. I was like, okay, well, then you're not a real journalist because you didn't check. You just, whatever they tell you, you just put out, and that's truth until it's. So anyway, back to the COVID thing. He said, well, if you have the ability to possibly save one person by getting the vaccine, wouldn't we all want to do that? And I'm like, yes, well, of course, but we don't know if that's the truth.
It's a logical fallacy.
Right. And it's like, Then you come to find out that for every one person saved, 1,000 people died.
Right, exactly.
Or
especially economic consequences and depression and
the biggest
lack of
transfer of wealth
testing
in human history, too.
Right. That's like that Will Ferrell character on the SNL where he's like, if the moon was made out of spare ribs, would you eat them?
Would you eat it?
Yeah, it's like that's literally the argument they're making.
Yeah,
and it's hilarious.
Like, it's the mask thing and all that stuff. It's fine. Also, with wearing the mask.
Fauci admitted, by the way, that I don't know if you saw that, but this was like a couple weeks ago. Fauci was testifying before a committee in Congress, and he said there was also no basis for that argument. It just kind of his quote. I'm not going to directly quote him. Don't whatever, but. It was something along the lines of like there was no material basis for that claim. It just kind of manifested into being.
Right.
You can Google that right now. If you're listening to this, Google that right now. There was nothing to substantiate the mask claim. There was nothing to substantiate the 6-foot rule claim. It was complete bullshit, and people were fighting each other, arresting people, removing your right to habeas corpus.
Dude. Demonized, absolutely demonized. Like people out in public, you're not wearing a mask, outside.
Right. I see people at the bus stop wearing a mask, and I'm like, what's in now? And I'm like, what's wrong with you? Like,
or in their own car by themselves.
Yeah.
Like these people have lost their mind, and I think they've just been programmed so much by just like the political landscape and their ability to 100% control the narrative to the point where people are just, hating their neighbors for personal decisions that they make, which is crazy. And then when they get it wrong, they don't have the common decency to be like, listen, we messed this whole thing up.
And this is the nature of trust. I keep seeing things from media outlets that are reporting on like institutional trust and whatnot, and how the nature of like conspiracy theories are on the rise, or the trust in conspiracy theories are on the rise. People tend to think that trust means knowing secrets about someone else, or knowing secrets that other people don't know and holding in that secret information. But the nature of trust is being able to admit that you're wrong. Like if I were to go, hey Darren, the sky's green, and I'm an expert on this subject, so I know that the sky is green. And you go out there and you see it's blue, and you're like, hey, it looks blue to me. And I'm like, nope, it's green. Are you going to trust me when I say like your house is on fire or something? No, you're going to be like, Scott's a crazy person. Yeah. And this is what people have done for the last 4 years with this giant part of our lives, with inflation, with COVID, with I'm not going to get into a certain topic, but whether or not a certain event was a riot or not, yeah. Like,
right.
It's like you can't just gaslight us into thinking things are true. And if you try to, I'm going to think you're crazy and not trust you on anything else. The nature of journalism is bringing a narrative that's based in factual information, that you use facts to convince someone of that narrative. And we've completely gone into this realm where, oh, I said it, so it's true. That's my truth. That's my opinion. Great. It's an opinion, right?
Right.
There is no basis of truth in discourse anymore. It is simply rhetorical. It's simply to win arguments. There's a thing called Hegelian dialectics. If you're listening to this, Google Hegelian dialectics. Hegel was a philosopher, and basically the basis of his philosophy was, so I have a desk in front of me. Hegel would say you should view this desk not as a desk, but as the labor that made the desk, the trees that were cut down, the soil and all. And then eventually it's going to be ash and it'll be atoms and whatever. One day it'll be something else. Who knows? But Hegelian dialectics removes the argument from reality and then goes, all right, well, within my weird like Harry Potter rules, let's debate whether or not magic is real, but within the context of Harry Potter, not like in the context of our actual reality. And that is what's happening everywhere. This is straight up this is straight up communist ideology. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
And that's not me like Fox News and oh, everyone's a communist. This is legitimately Hegelian dialectics. Also, check out a podcast called James Lindsay, or it's called New Discourses with James Lindsay. He goes into this a lot. You're gonna think I'm a fascist now or whatever, but seriously, this is the goal:
what's
remove
the other option, Scott? Not to interrupt you, but what's the other option? Right? It's like either you're with them or you're just a fascist.
Sure, and that is proves my point right there. What is a fascist? What does it even mean? Okay, call me a fascist. Who cares?
Sure. Like, do you understand? Or any opinion that is against, just whatever that narrative is, and it doesn't have to be left. Thing. Could be right. The current thing, you are a fascist, and this is now going to be it's either fascism or communism. It's like
back in the day, it was the little yellow ribbons on your car. Remember that?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, dude. I mean,
where's your yellow ribbon, you goddamn communist? We're
going to find the weapons of mass destruction, aren't we?
Jesus Christ.
But anyway,
those same people are now telling you to listen to. It's so wild. They were like, oh, anyway, I digress.
Lindsay's who just flatten Gaza. Like, dude, no. What did Tucker? That was such a great tweet from Tucker Carlson. I had a picture of him and. Oh, I saved it. I should send it to you, but it's like a picture and he just says fucking psychopaths. And it's a picture of both of them. And it's like, holy cow. Tucker Carlson he's more popular than he's ever been. But I mean, it's just interesting to see a guy who was so Fox centric. And now it's
he even talks about this too.
Yeah.
He talks about it regularly. He's like, I was kind of a moron, as a mouthpiece.
Well, don't they always say that? Like Bill O'Reilly got off. It's like, my bad.
Yeah.
But
anyway, that is exactly why Tucker is popular and why he's trusted, because he can say that, right?
Right.
He is able to go, yeah, that was wrong. I was dumb. I'm sorry.
And that's all these people have. And there's the trust.
Exactly.
Right. And that's why people trust what he says, because he's like able to just like you said, be like, you know what? I messed up. I'm sorry. I got that wrong.
Right.
And that's what Vivek, I liked about Vivek. He had a lot of, takes that I was not a super big fan of, but there was a lot that I did like of him. And part of that, he talked about the media. He's like, you know what, we just need to restart. You guys need to come out and apologize and say because the way that he treated the media was fair.
Yeah.
He was like, I'm not going to do this white nationalist supremacist thing. Of course, I'm against all this stuff, but I'm just not going to say it. And you're going to report that I didn't tomorrow. And that lady did. Right. But he was just like, you guys need to
dialectics.
That's exactly right. You need to go back. You need to restart. I'm sorry. We messed all this up. What we're going to do from this point forward is we're going to report the truth and apologize. And we can't, just so you know that we're honest. And that goes for both sides.
One thing that I've been doing, especially with people that'll actually still talk to me, because I lost a lot of friends and a lot of acquaintances during the pandemic, because I was just like, this is not what we're being told.
You're not the only one.
I'm sorry, but yeah, I lost a lot of friends during the pandemic. Right. But something I've been doing recently is instead of talking about the vocabulary word, I talk about what is actually happening. So when someone calls me a fascist or whatever, I'll be like, well, what is fascism? What does that mean to you? How am I a fascist? What do you mean? Can you define what fascism means? And they're like, oh, well, that's a fascist talking point. That's how fascism. I'm like, okay, so what is fascism, so that I can defend or agree with that? Maybe
whatever
I am
the
a
point
fascist.
Yeah, right.
Maybe I am. If I am, okay, I'm proudly one, I guess. But what are you talking about? What do you mean, so that I can agree or disagree with that? And
because
the same thing goes with exactly. The same thing goes with white supremacy or whatever. What does white supremacy mean to you? To bring up that Vivek comment, he was like, does that mean like showing up to work on time? That was literally his response was,
Yeah,
do you mean
right,
like showing up to work on time is white supremacy? Because then I guess, yeah, I'm a white supremacist, you know? And
right.
we live in this soundbite society where what I just said, you've got like 10 sound bites where you can edit it and go, look at this Scott guy saying, yeah, I'm a fascist. Yippee do. Like, again, that one right there. If I say, I'm a fascist, you can now like take that
Clip it.
little clip and look, Scott's a fascist. Oh my
Right.
God.
Yeah.
But what does that even mean? Like, okay, cool. So the way that I think that we disarm these morons, for lack of a better way to put it, is by asking them what they actually mean and then arguing with that, either
Right.
agreeing or disagreeing with what they actually mean.
Because
And this
that's what
breaks.
stops. Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, let's just break down the Hegelian dialectics. It breaks down their ability to wordsmith things into existence. The
That's right.
unfortunate reality is that you've got a lot of people that don't. I mean, we're like 5% of the population having this conversation, right? Most
Sure.
people, they wait until like a week before the election and they watch a bunch of stuff and they go, okay, I'm going to vote for that guy. Yeah,
Right.
I'm informed. I'm super smart and everyone else is dumb. And yeah, I should guns are bad, but voting for some warmongering idiot isn't, you know?
Isn't
Gun
that crazy?
I would say voting kills more people than guns. You know what I'm
Well,
saying?
ruins more relationships for sure. And that's the wild part to me is people can't have just different views and just get along. I honestly I saw a post from a good friend who's going to be a guest next week, and got me really intrigued. And it was this post about how Trump is a traitor and an insurrectionist, or whatever the words you want to use, and all this other stuff.
Sure.
And I didn't respond to any of that, but I just said, well, what's our other option? Our other option is Biden, who, like, unfortunately, it's very sad. It is sad to me, but he does belong in a home. I mean, he
Right.
is.
I mean, my dad and Biden are very similar, you know?
Yes, I mean, he just doesn't. He's not there, and we all know. You don't have to be
I genuinely
a
felt bad watching that press conference last
dude. It's so
Friday.
difficult,
It was
and
sad to watch.
it
Yeah.
is. It is. And it's not like we as Americans don't want a strong president. Like, listen, Obama was amazing in front of the
Sure.
camera. He was somebody you wanted to have a beer with. You know what I mean? He was like
Absolutely.
a friend. And then he just like drone striked weddings for 5 years. You know what I mean? So,
Yes.
great.
Yeah.
But
You remember
which is
me out on
that's
the
truth.
surface.
Yeah.
Remember the
But
paintings I was doing?
yeah, yes, dude. Yes, the paintings at Microsoft.
The
Which
mushroom cloud
yeah,
of
dude, you almost got fired, dude.
yeah. Yep.
And you left them on all the tablets. You spent
Yep.
like 8 hours just like, and then people were like, "What are this? This is the Twin Towers."
Yes.
But yeah, so it's sad to see him. And the guy responded with, "We're not voting for Biden. We're voting against Trump." And I like almost,
Morons. No offense.
dude,
Sorry. I don't mean that.
almost just had an aneurysm because I'm like, what does that mean? And so I'm like, okay, my next post is, okay, so what's the solution? Right? Because Trump, believe it or not, is, for all intent and purpose, is more of a centrist
Right.
than
He's a
what you
populist.
got. He is than what you got coming down the line, right? What's your next person in the Republican Party is Nikki
Haley.
Yeah, Nikki Hillary or whatever they
Hillary
call her.
Clinton.
Yes, dude. I mean, she lost to no one.
Right.
And she's still in it. And she couldn't tell you where she thinks the troops should go in Ukraine. She has no clue why the Civil War started. She asked the journalist. The journalist said, I think you should probably answer that. You're running for the United States presidency.
Right.
And it's like, so you've got just farther right. You're going farther right. And it's like, so how do we fix that? And you're right. Like,
here's
people,
the.
go ahead.
No, I interrupted you, bro. You go first.
No, you're good. You're good. I want to hear it.
Okay. So the interesting thing is that in the primaries in 2019, I actually voted for Joe Biden because I wanted Democrats to hang their hat on the guy. I wanted them, I didn't think he would win. I'll be honest with you. I am surprised that Democrats voted for all intents and purposes, like a mental vegetable. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
and I say, I don't say that to be rude, I guess. I'm just saying I'm not making fun of the guy, but I voted for Biden in the primaries because I wanted Democrats to vote for him and it just show how freaking hypocritical and unintellectual they are. Because for all intents and purposes, one, he's not that different from Trump or not Trump, but he's not that different from the Republicans on a lot of his policy basis. I mean, things that things it, basically you've got two reactionary parties, and what I mean by that is they react to each other. There's no proactive part. All they do is just go, well, Donald Trump said this thing, so it's bad. And that could be like Donald Trump could come out and be like, I think universal health care is good, and Democrats will be like, I think universal health care is bad, and only Nazis like universal health care. Joe Biden could come out and say, I think we should close the border. And I think Republican now they wouldn't, but previously they would have been like, oh, this is like a overreach of federal power and he's usurping the blah blah blah. Even anyway, you just have two parties that react to one another instead of proactively looking at solutions to problems
And getting
so
anything done.
right. And at this point, there is no functional difference between
No,
Joe Biden and Republicans.
no.
But that's
Because
where Trump comes in because he's like this alternative to this nonsense that again, people who are low information Democrats, they see what the news says and they go, wow, that must be true. But there are like 4chan trolls or like people on the internet, people that troll like I do, who love
yeah,
Trump because he represents a big middle finger to the
the
establishment. He
that's
represents,
right.
this is what Trump is. That's all it is. He's
Yes,
just
right.
like, "Brr," and we're like, yes, that's great. Fuck those
That's right.
people,
I mean, I don't like. I'll probably vote libertarian, and lose like we usually do. But um, you're absolutely right. I mean, he is like it's very interesting to me, and it honestly kind of makes me smile. Like they've done everything that you can do, and they being the Democrats, like the really entrenched ones,
Call him the
to
uniparty.
yeah, to get right. To get him off all the old tricks, right? They're like, let's get a mugshot of him. That'll end his political career. Not only did that not work, he now made more money by selling mugs with his mugshot on it, right? Like everything they're doing. Okay, well, let's charge him with all these bogus lawsuits, and he just wins. And the thing is, something crazy will happen. I mean, I doubt they'll let him anywhere near the White House, but I just think it's wild that he's just, the more they try to keep him away, the more popular he gets, and they just can't see that.
He's a
They're not
mud
like,
monster.
right.
The
They
more
just
mud you
can't.
throw on him, he's just like,
Well, that's also
"Brah."
because everybody who's been in Washington for the last 70 years, like they have no idea what's going on outside of Washington. They're so entrenched, and we're not just talking about Democrats, Republicans too. Like Mitch McConnell had a not even a no shit seizure
It's like,
in the middle of a press
that's what he
conference.
did. He was just like,
And it's like,
where was I?
that guy, like that's what's controlling our country. The guy was, you know what I'm saying? That's like, it's like, dude, you don't know the price of bread, milk, gas, like, whatever.
You
They're all
also have a large portion of people who are college educated, and you know me, people tend to say that I'm an intelligent person. You know what I'm saying? I like to disagree with them and say I'm no different than everyone else because I don't think I am. But I graduated high school with a 1.3 GPA and didn't go to college. You know what I'm saying?
right.
So you have a bunch of people that went to college who are used to the professorial classroom in which you can only speak in a certain way and in a certain turn, and using certain words or thinking certain things is uncouth, and oh my god, clutch the pearls, how dare you say that market economics is, or oh my god, you said Keynes is incorrect. Oh, it's like they're all coming from that point of view. So a dude like Trump, they just don't understand why people like him. And not we, but I am a libertarian, but I love Trump. I won't lie, I love Trump. would he be my first choice if there was like a solid libertarian candidate? I'd be like, hell yeah, let's like
Yeah.
the dude down in Argentina or whatever. He's great,
Malay, yeah.
Malay.
Hmm.
I think he's amazing. But we
Yeah.
don't have that choice. We have
No, not yeah.
libertarians who go out there and lose intentionally. But
Yeah.
Trump is a hilarious. You know what I just love why, and they don't get why I like Trump. It has nothing to do with really a policy basis. I mean, I had a thriving business under him. I had I had passive income. I had 6 employees. You know what I'm saying? I hired people. I provided income for them, and they had lives and whatnot. And so with that being said, like, sure, Trump was great, but I just love that Trump gets out there and he's like, yeah, you're dumb. You know, you're stupid.
Yeah.
Yeah. All that college bullshit ain't going to work here because I don't care. Like, I don't care. You're dumb.
Right.
And,
Because,
and
and
as,
I think you're not, obviously you're not the only one, but for me, I don't know who I'm voting for, honestly, but I
sure.
just
Yeah.
think
You don't have to announce it.
a lot of people are on that boat where it's not that they love Trump. They love the fact that he's like taking on this incredibly rigged system
Yeah. Yeah. It's
and,
great.
and beating it down, and not in like the usual eloquent way. It's just like, nope, China. It's like, you know what I'm saying? Like there's I love watching him just,
Wrong.
I mean, listen, Shane Gillis, like half his
That's
thing
gayer
is
than ISIS.
I can't believe that. That was the funniest thing. But yeah, and he gets his whole one of his part of his entire act is Trump, and he just loves it because the way he doesn't love Trump like that. He just loves Trump because he says that stuff. And it's like, that's
Right.
not a usual politician. And people like that, like country folks like that. And then that's just the way it is. It doesn't mean they're racist or fascist. You can that's my point is
They
you like
may
whoever
be,
you like.
but
Yeah.
it's not inherent.
No, it is not.
Dude,
It
I
isn't. You're
grew up
right.
watching movies like Blazing Saddles and History of the World.
Dude,
You know what
Blazing
I'm saying?
Saddles is so good, dude. It's so funny
Right.
that is on, what is that on? I don't know if it's Netflix, but we came across it. My
Someone's
daughter's like,
going to have to go back and get a shitload of dimes.
my daughter's like, what is this? I'm like, this movie is something you will be watching when you get old enough. Like,
Right.
this is something that would never, ever, ever, ever make it.
My mom showed me that movie when I was like 7 or 8 or something.
Yeah.
So that probably explains a lot of why I am the way I am.
Right. Yeah.
But
I
I'm
just think
not I'm not like I don't look at black people or whatever and go, I'd never hire them because they're raw, or
yeah.
like look at a disabled person and I'm like, yeah, I would. You're stupid because you're disabled. Like even the terms like racism and all this stuff. Now we have to do like 7 backflips and hire a shaman and some kind of like dude who throws chicken bones on the floor to determine what racism means. And it's like,
Yeah.
do you look at different races and think they're less than you? No?
Yeah.
Okay, you're not racist. Do you make jokes about stereotypes related to certain races? Yeah, maybe you make maybe you're stereotypical, but like, did Dave Chappelle rags on everyone? Does that mean he like thinks that people are less than him? I don't know. We'd have to actually talk to him about it,
Right.
There's
To
this thing that's
understand instead of just making all these blind assumptions.
Sure.
And it's, but that's another thing. So one of my favorite podcasts is Part of the Problem with Dave Smith. And,
oh yeah, Dave Smith and Robbie the Fire Bernstein.
The Fire Bernstein, man. I love them.
I listen
both.
to them all. I wait for that show to come out. I'm like, come on. Oh.
Honest, I am the same.
They're so good.
I am the same way. And you know
it's
what?
Such a great show.
It's so funny. He talks about that Rogan bump where you get a bump from going on Rogan. I heard him on Joe Rogan, and then as soon as I heard him, I'm like, oh, maybe I'll look this podcast up. I'm as close to a libertarian as you can get, I think, right? Because I was very politically malaligned, like didn't really know. I had thoughts from both sides or whatever, and I didn't have a home. And dude, I listened to like all 90 episodes in 2 days. Like I just had my AirPod in, driving my UPS truck. Bleep that out. And just listen to it. And it's like the more I listen, the more I agree, because the thing is they don't ask, they're not reactionary, right? They're not reactionary. They're like, how did we get here? Why are we here? Instead of like, we're here, let's fight it, like, like against each other. It's like, okay, Why is Israel and Gaza still happening? Why is the Ukraine thing? Why are we sending money to Ukraine? Why did we do this with COVID? Like, how did we get here? And that's the most interesting part to me is like not being reactionary, but then like learning about it. And then the tough part for most people is once they get back to that truth, they're like, either they get, whatever pill do you want to call it? Cause I can't do colors cause then it's blue or red, but once they get pilled and they're like, their eyes are open, they're like, oh my gosh, this is all either just a lie or propaganda or, whatever the case may be. But I just really appreciate, the whole truth seeking when it is not something that people do nowadays. Journalists do not trust to verify. Just like you said, it's like when you have these conversations, people are just like, you're a fascist. Like you had stated previously. It's like, you're not a fascist. He's just like trying to talk about it because dialogue helps. And especially if what he's saying is the actual truth, a lot of times it's very hard to hear. Because, like I said,
one other thing is humor is a really good mechanism for talking about uncomfortable things and talking about things that are uncouth. I keep using that word, but
that's a great
sarcasm is a great mechanism within humor to discuss these topics because it allows us to like poke fun at the hypocrisy or the holes in an argument. And something that I've noticed happening as well, particularly with people on the left, but obviously you got like right-wing Karens and boomers and stuff, is that sarcasm is now perceived as like racist, for example. You can't it's a complicated topic because you hear like silence is violence kind of stuff, or I don't know where I'm going with that, but you use sarcasm to like troll or elicit a reaction out of someone to like upset them intentionally so that they then think about their thought process, and that has been labeled as racist or a thing that can't be used in the public polite society. So when we remove this ability to be humorous, what made me think about it is how on my troll account, I'm basically just being sarcastic. You don't know what my perspective actually is on there because I'll dog on whoever, whenever. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Obviously, I have a right-leaning slant or a libertarian, anti-authoritarian slant, but most of the time I'm just trolling, I'm just trying to get you to clutch your pearls and get mad because that allows for the opening. You get the foot in the door and you like, here's an example. You brought up Ukraine, right? Remember when Trump wanted, we now have a border problem. We have this like, this giant amount of immigrants coming across the border, and it's the abuse of the asylum system. And that was exactly what Trump was talking about like 7 years ago, right? In his State of the Union address, he brought up basically that people were abusing the asylum laws and we needed to take care of it. And everyone was like, oh my God, that's so racist. And how can you, oh my God. And they're like, we can't spend $5 billion on a border wall.
They just approved
$5 billion?
6 billion, 96.3. I honestly, no joke, because we were talking today, I no joke pulled it up, and it's impossible to find the full amount, but it's 100.
Oh, you're talking about Ukraine? I think it's almost 200 billion at this point.
Yeah, it's close to 200 billion, but they just $95.3 billion to Ukraine today. They just 60 billion. 60 billion to Ukraine, 95.3 passed the Senate last night. So like you're going with like, it was racist, it was awful. We don't have 5 billion to spend on a border wall,
but we can give 200 billion to Ukraine.
That's correct. And that 5 billion, you could have built 3 border walls and given every homeless veteran $1 million.
Right.
I mean, the World Economic Forum, or not, I don't know who it is. Maybe it's the World Economic Forum. Whoever measures homelessness or is able to measure. They said, remember that tweet that Elon Musk is like super famous for? He's like, listen, if you can prove through all your finances and release that, I will sell part of SpaceX and end world hunger.
What a racist.
what they were going to take.
Sorry.
He said if it's true that it's going to take $2 billion, I will end world hunger, because they tweeted at him and said, like, if you just put this money towards this, you could end world hunger. And he's like, okay, release how you're going to do that with the $2 billion, and I will give you $2 billion. And they never could. But I'm just saying that's another option.
Sure.
I mean, and speaking
Yes.
of Ukraine, not to get into too much of it, but like, where is that money? We're just losing. They just don't know where it is. And they break
It's
it down.
the biggest money laundering scheme in history, dude.
Dude, they break it down so strange, because like I was looking like how much. Okay, so for example, PBS. PBS said we've sent 75 billion. That's not true. We haven't sent 75 billion, but they're breaking it down as like 5 billion for this, 6 billion for this, but the total amount is like 134. But they're only snipping that little bit.
What's happening in Ukraine is, in my opinion, don't get me wrong, blah blah blah. There's bad people fighting each other or whatever. I mean, that's so surface level in this conversation that sure, it's a given that this mean Putin guy invaded, and he's super bad and super duper mean and bad and mean and mean and bad. Okay, so we got that out of the way. Putin bad. Okay, for all you morons that are listening to this. The other thing is like, Zelensky bad. There's Nazis in Ukraine, and literally Zelensky like suspended elections and made all of his political opposition illegal and whatnot. And that needs to be said as well, because
he also originally ran on peace.
Yeah, that was his thing. Just like Joe Biden ran on unity.
That's exactly right.
But what's going on in Ukraine is it's a public works project, because all of that money goes right back into American companies to build bombs and shit to send over there. So the reason why the Democrats are so, we got to do this, is because it fluffs up the numbers for their job numbers, their GDP numbers, all that stuff. It's a way to make the economy look better than it is. And you've got, obviously you and I are normal people and we're struggling because, and like everyone else is, whether or not they want to admit it or not, you've got people that can like barely afford rent and groceries and whatever. And freaking credit card debt in this country is like $1.1 trillion right now. And the public debt is $34 trillion. So Ukraine is part of an effort to funnel money back into the American system, back into companies that fund these people to get elected. And also it fluffs up their numbers. So every time they send $1 to Ukraine, we get 90% of it back via these funnels that essentially redirect it. And you've got large amounts of it being laundered and bribing people, and Ukraine is one of the most corrupt countries on the planet. We know that.
I know a lot of people don't like to hear that, but that is the truth.
Literally. I mean, and the irony is like all of the impeachment crap, and like the first impeachment against Donald Trump, right? He was impeached because Joe Biden was on camera saying that he quid pro quo'd the prosecutor into not investigating his son. And then when that didn't happen, he had the president fire the guy. And Trump's like, hey, Zelensky. It was Zelensky too at the time. He's like, hey, do you have any information on this literal video of Joe Biden talking about getting someone fired for investigating his son, that we now know there's all this corruption and millions of dollars going? Like, what is going on? As soon as he did that is when everything went to shit too.
Yeah.
The machine was like, holy crap, this dude's about to crowbar out what's actually going on right now. Yeah. And because Joe Biden is a moron and is losing his freaking mind, and he's talking publicly about corruption and doing it, and they're all involved. All of them are involved. It's not just Joe Biden.
That's another thing too, is none of them will ever see any type of repercussion for anything that they do. None of these people will.
Right.
Left or right. And if it quacks like a duck, it doesn't really matter for them, because it could be a cheetah, really.
Sure.
But
that's what started all of this, was 2019 when Donald Trump started looking into Joe Biden's comment about Burisma and getting the prosecutor fired, because there's so much money going through Ukraine that's funneling back to all of these people. And man,
well, we really got to go back to before that. We got to go back to the COVID. I mean, like kind of loop that around, because during COVID, during those policies that unfortunately Trump is kind of responsible for, inputting an absolutely strange dude like Anthony Fauci in front of the American people Which
the reasons
I
I don't
probably
like
will
Donald
never
Trump.
forgive Donald Trump for that. Honestly, I don't think I'll
Sure.
ever, because my kid didn't go to school. We had to, I mean, if we didn't have Danielle, edit that out too. It didn't have her mother here. My job was essential. So at least I had work, but a lot of
Sure.
other people didn't. And so there goes the, well, I can't use that pen because it's got the label on it. Here goes the economic, the downturn. It starts with having people work from home, people losing their jobs, people not being able to pay rent. That's really where all of this craziness started, right? And they have to somehow puff up their, like, and if you want to go back to what you were saying, they have to puff up their numbers because everything looks so awful now. Because just over the last 3 years, it has gotten substantially worse. And
Right.
unfortunately, I mean, this is just, again, my opinion, but it really did. It started with COVID and the policies put
absolutely.
forth. And so here we are with Ukraine,
and to put the conspiracy, I won't even go down the conspiracy theory route, but
dude, why not?
The timing of when all of that occurred. Well, I don't want to get you, I don't want to get your first episode of this show.
Well, I can listen. I can edit it out, dude.
I'm just saying, maybe another time later on, you can have me on again and we'll talk about COVID conspiracy theories and why it happened and all that stuff. COVID was real. And,
dude, Jon Stewart,
and you need to go get your vaccines.
I don't mean to interrupt, but Jon Stewart's little rant when he was on Colbert, and Colbert was like getting all uncomfortable because remember he was like ranting. He said, "Isn't that strange? I wonder where this virus came from. Definitely the wet market, not the Wuhan coronavirus lab that's right next door,
across the street.
Across the street, that's conveniently got the same name."
It came from a bat.
It came from a bat, dude.
Yes. If anyone asking, it came from a bat. Don't Google Wuhan leak lab theory. Don't Google that. It's bad.
No, it's bad.
Don't Google gain of function research funded by Anthony Fauci. Don't do that.
Don't do that. And then Robert Malone.
Don't Google that either.
Don't Google that either. Well, there is an episode where those two gentlemen are on there and they're like, something's wrong here. And they're like the actual experts.
Yeah.
And like they're getting banned from Twitter and banned from YouTube and banned everywhere they went. And it's like,
so I personally,
go ahead.
So on March 13th, we'll go, maybe not exactly on the 13th, but around March 13th,
sure,
I had a functioning business. I had all of my bills paid for, right? I had passive income. And yeah, some people listening to me like, oh, this greedy capitalist fuck, like go to work and get a job, you fucking. But I had a functioning business that paid for my life. I live modestly. My rent was super low, thank God. But I had a functioning business with employees. On March 14th, some idiot went on TV and was like, we need to shut down society for 2 weeks to flatten the curve.
That's right.
On March 28th, I was like, okay, so it's been 2 weeks. I've now exhausted my savings, basically, or I exhausted my cash on hand, paying people. And now I'm going to start using my savings. Like 5 months later, I start getting assistance from the state government because and for those wondering, I had a dog training business and a pet care business. My employees would go to people's houses and walk their dogs, and I was doing that as well. And I would train dogs and stuff, and go to their homes and train their dogs. Well, what were we not allowed to do during the pandemic? And a majority of my clients were federal employees and teachers who would go to work during the day. I lived in the DC area at the time. So all of my customers were now home. They didn't need their dogs walked. They weren't going on vacations, so they needed pet care and dog sitting. And I went from having a thriving business and having a decent income and being able to live normally to being like broke, like,
right.
And for not because my business sucked, not because no one wanted to hire me, but because the government arbitrarily said you're not essential. And beyond that, all my employees were home because they shut down the damn government. And what am I supposed to do? I also didn't get PPP loans because I am a principled libertarian and they told me it was going to be 2 weeks. So I didn't immediately go, oh, let me just take this money from the government, because I'm like, oh, it's only 2 weeks. I set up my business to, we're good. I got cash on hand. We're good. It's going to suck, but we're good. And then by the time I could apply for PPP loans, freaking Amazon and all these huge corporations had taken all the money. And that
Right.
wasn't a problem. No one cared. They were like, oh, why
No
don't you
one
get
said
PPP
anything.
loans, you moron? Like, what?
Yeah.
Oh,
Why
why don't you
didn't?
just get your
Yeah.
P? And dude, it was, and then you started seeing stuff like, you're talking about rent. The problem that occurred was that the solution to the problem they created made the problem worse. It's like I can't think of an analogy now, but you drink poison, and you're like, oh my god, I just drank some poison, and to like cure the poison, you like cut your arm open to bleed out the poison or something and bleed to death. You know what I'm saying? It's
Yes.
ridiculous. And you
Wild.
had, okay.
It's wild.
So, and I took some notes because I knew that inflation would come up. And
Yes.
hold up, let
Yes.
me pull up the
And that's
inflation notes, because there's so many freaking things that they just did wrong. The first one was the housing moratorium. Like, it is awful that people were losing their homes or they weren't able to rent and whatnot, but you caused that, you know? So what do? They say you don't have to pay your rent for 2 years, right? And what do you think people did with that surplus of money
they
that they
bought goods and
didn't?
services that they couldn't before.
Right. They bought DoorDash
Right.
every day, or
Yep.
they bought TVs and shit.
That they couldn't
And
afford because they were paying. I mean, you're talking, Scott. You're talking like 2 grand. 2 grand
yeah.
saved a month. Well, just think about that. So if you had an extra 2 grand a month, what would you do with it? Honestly.
Well, and what would most people do with it, right?
Right. Right.
Personally, I would save it,
Well,
or
that's
I
what I'm
would,
saying. But what I'm saying
yeah.
is, if you just go from what you're going through right now to then all of a sudden every month you get a 2 grand check, and you're like, oh, this could really help me. I do need a new TV, or I've been thinking about podcasting, or I've been, whatever it may be. Oh, I can put money towards that now. So
Here's the analogy that I'll use with people who don't seem to get it, and I know we're kind of running up on time, so
yeah,
I understand that. But the analogy that I'll use is, imagine you have a house, so you buy a house for, like, let's say 200 grand. You now have a bank note that says you owe them like 313 grand with interest. You reverse mortgage that home, you get a $200,000 loan, and you spend that $200,000 on like pudding snack packs or something, just consumable goods.
sure.
Now you have a home that's worth 200 grand. You owe the bank $515,000, and you have nothing to show for that extra 200 grand because you ate
Right.
all the pudding. That is what the government did during COVID, and they're like, how did inflation occur? I don't get it. Like, come
Because
on, dude.
yeah,
You
that's the thing,
idiots.
they know. And of course it's not really going
They
to affect somebody who any of these politicians. They already make too
if
much
you
money, so
owned
they got
if you
to do that.
owned assets, if you owned the pudding cups before this process occurred, you are now exorbitantly rich, right? And that's what
Yeah.
happened, is they propped up the people that already owned assets. They already owned these consumable goods. They, like,
Right.
Amazon exploded, DoorDash, and all these
Yeah.
consumable good businesses went through the freaking roof, and money just went from poor people to wealthy people, right?
That's right.
I
Right.
love capitalism, but I don't love that. I don't.
This is not
Yeah,
capitalism.
that is fascism. That's literally what
1000%.
fascism is.
Yes. Exactly.
Minus all of the social aspects of it, of machoism and all that crap. That is
Right.
economic fascism. So
Right.
so basically, the other thing that occurred was that they put a pause on student loans. And on the basis of this, on face value, I see why they're like, oh, well, people can't pay their loans, they can't pay their rent. Let's pause it and let's give them money, right?
Sure.
Again, with the student loans, what did they do with
Right.
it? They spent it on stuff. They didn't use it
Well,
to pay off their debt.
that's what I'm saying. So, and this is
Yeah.
also a symptom of an economy that, you know, pay has not kept up with any of the ever changing prices and the market. So, you talk about going from like, I will give you a great example at this place that I work at. uh, they make, we'll just say $14 an hour. Okay, so that's $400 a week, right?
Yeah.
So maybe your whole paycheck
Brutal.
biweekly is like, we'll just say 812, right? That's what it would be. Okay, childcare for 2 kids is $300 per kid per week. That's $600. I mean,
Yeah.
there's your whole paycheck right there. And so when you get people who for a long time have worked these jobs that should have, kept going like this with pay and have not, get an extra 2,000, even an extra 500. Like, of course you're going to spend it on other things that you start thinking like, oh, I've always wanted an iPad. I've always wanted this. It's like, okay, well, I can get that now. And with these unemployment checks during COVID, servers, which God bless all those people. I mean, really.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
It's wild to me. I was having a chit chat with a friend of mine. We can go as long as you want, but a friend of mine yesterday about he said something I've always said. It's like, if once you get out of high school, you can either do one of two things. One, you join the military for 2 years. You don't have to. If you don't want to do that, you have to go into some type of customer service job, just so you can see what it's like on the other side. But these waiters and waitresses that rely, I mean, they get $2 an hour and tips. Now they're getting paychecks that are like 4, 5, 6, 7 times what they were making at a restaurant. And then, oh, hey, come back to work. Why would I come back to work? I'm making 7 times that amount sitting at home. And I don't have to pay my rent. And I don't have to pay my college tuition. What do you think happened? They started buying TVs.
They didn't think about that's going to end one day. And for me, this is like you're saying, right? This is symptomatic of something else. This is simply just this is the fact that people don't, every dollar in circulation in the United States of America is a debt note because of the way that central banks work. It's not a measure of capital. It is a measure of how much debt you owe the Federal Reserve.
That's right. That's absolutely right.
In America, the game is to be basically own the debt of other people. And people don't understand how to play, even win the game in the United States, which is to create enough surplus to fund you need more assets than liabilities. And this is probably going over the heads of some people, but so like we were talking earlier that I want to live on a sailboat, right?
Yes.
When and I'm going to, it's not that I want to, it's that I'm so close to living on a sailboat, right?
Yeah. Right.
And basically the boat is bigger than most people's living quarters, right? Most people rent a room or something and they have a bathroom and a kitchen they share or whatever. I've got all of that on a thing that floats. And 2 points. One, I can go somewhere and drop the anchor and live there for free, right? I don't pay rent if I'm living out in the water. Got a little dinghy. I find maybe I pay someone like $50 a month to be able to dock at their dock to get groceries and stuff, or I go to the public beach or whatever. But that's one thing to keep in mind here. The other one is if I pay to dock it somewhere, I'm looking at between $300 and $800 a month. Hold on one second.
You're fine.
Dad's texting me.
You're fine.
I'm paying between $300 and $800 a month to dock the boat there and kind of live there, right? So if I'm able to create a passive income stream via a business or any way, really, there's a million ways. By the way, I got a podcast called Stop Waiting. Stop Waiting, the perfect time will never come. That will be starting up here real soon, and that show is going to be very much in line with what we talked about today, but more of like helping you escape the matrix, right? Like, how do I get out of this crap?
It's so funny, not to interrupt you, but that's exactly why I started thinking. Of course I shot a DM to Dave Smith like he'd ever get back to me, but I was just like, where do I start? Yeah, where do I start? I gotta figure this out. You have to be able to be proactive and do something, but there's just this government, this machine, this everything has gotten so big. Like, what does an average American do? So I think that's a great idea for her.
So stop waiting. We'll be launching. There's a couple episodes out already, but I'm relaunching it. So I don't think you'll be able to see any of them right now.
Okay.
But my point is, if I can make something like let's say dog walking, right?
Sure.
And I've probably got 3 to 4 minutes left, but let's say dog walking, right?
Okay. Yeah.
If I can send someone to someone's house and they make $20 to walk this dog for 20 minutes, right, or 30 minutes, and I charge the client $25 as my business, right? If they work 8 hours a day, I'm making $80 a day, right, off of that employee. And if I can multiply that by, let's say I have 5 employees, I'm making $400 a day doing nothing, essentially. Now I find the clients, I process their paychecks, I pay the insurance, I pay for all that other crap, I pay for the leashes and the different shit, right? Whatever's left over at the end of the month, if that's more than $800, my rent's now paid. If that's $800 plus my insurance, plus my phone bill, plus my health insurance. Let's say at the end of the month I've got $2,000. That may not seem, it takes a lot of work to get to that, but that's the game. That's how you win this system, right? You have to get more money at the end of the month than you spend. It's so simple. You can do that a bunch of ways, but what we're taught to do is spend on credit cards to infinity. Oh, I'll be able to pay it later. I'll probably be able to pay that off later. Here we go. You don't think about it in monthly increments. You think about, like, you make 40 grand a year or something. Not saying you do, but if you make 40 grand a year, that's like $3,000 a month. That's $150 a working day. That's, you're not thinking about these things in the right increments.
Right.
So the game is to escape that outlook and instead save the money and use that to build assets that then return money to you while you do nothing. That is the game.
While you do nothing, right?
Communist people will go, oh my God, you're exploiting labor.
Yeah, but here's the thing too, is it's really, like, especially this day, it's possible. And it is semi-realistic, but what I'm saying is that at our age, it's difficult. It's difficult.
My buddy and I have been selling AI generated images on Etsy for money. It is entirely automated. Use Midjourney to make the images, put them on Etsy and sell them as wallpapers for computers for like $3 or $4. You don't got to do anything. You use it is difficult. It's hard, but it's not complicated, which is how everything is going to work. Fast is slow and slow is fast. Don't overcomplicate the process. I'm not saying it's easy. Like I'm not going, you just get up there and bootstrap and I'm not saying that.
What's that guy who's like
Gary V?
Not Gary. Well, Gary V's hilarious, but he's a financial advisor, and he's always like, his takes are so wild. He's like, so how much do you spend on this, and how much well, that's too much. It's like, what do you mean that's too much?
Dave Ramsey.
Yes. It's like, dude, he's the guy who's like, pull him up by your bootstraps. Like, what?
He's a boomer.
Well, you know what? My parents just came out of that absolute hole when they were just like, what do you mean you can't buy a car with cash? I said, Mom, a car is $50,000.
Right.
That's
my dad used Uber the other day. My dad used Uber to go like 5 minutes down the road, and he was like, it was $12. I'm like, welcome to Joe Biden's America, Dad. Yeah. Welcome.
And the thing
is, you can't buy a house. You can't buy a house with a part-time job and 5 kids anymore, dude. It doesn't work that way.
And the Fed, of course, is going to start raising rates like minimally. I don't know however many times, but again, it's unfortunate. It all started, with this being a COVID episode, kind of. It started there, and it just progressively got worse. And every president is just going to inherit this.
We have to start paying our debt. Think about your personal finances. Yeah. If you're listening to this, think about your own personal finances. Yeah. You're into debt. You're 10 grand, 20 grand into debt. Are you going to take out more credit cards to pay off your debt? Unfortunately, you may have to, but think about what solves the problem. It's increasing your means and paying your debt off. There is no other solution.
Yeah.
My dude, I have to, I got to bring my dad to a doctor's appointment, brother.
No, you're good. I appreciate your time.